everybody, it's Jen. Welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, welcome. If you are returning, welcome back. As many of you know, I am a CARC, I'm SERPA, a rape crisis counselor, founder of Supplies for Life, and a whole bunch of other stuff. So today's video is kind of cool. Courtney is here with us today, and Courtney is somebody that I met from our community. And Courtney has a extremely unique job, and well, let Courtney get to it. Welcome, Courtney. Thank you for coming.
Hi.
So tell us, what's your job title? Where do you live? What do you do? Who do you work with? Blah, 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 blah.
Okay. So I live in Washington State, not Washington, D.C., about an hour south of Seattle.
Mm-hmm.
I work in forensic mental health. So the population I work with for my regular job have been found not guilty by reason of insanity. That's not something that every state has, but a lot of states do. So basically what that means is at the time a crime happened, someone's mental health was in such a state that they weren't acting in their right mind, essentially. So a lot of people are not familiar with this topic at all, and I don't know how much you want me to go into it, but basically, when you're found not guilty by reason of insanity, you are given the maximum sentence for that offense, right? So, For example, most people I work with either have a 10-year maximum sentence or a lifetime maximum sentence. And I know there's a lot of misconceptions around that an NGRI plea is like getting off and taking the easy way out, getting away with it. And actually, my people do, I don't want to say much more time, but if they had gone a different route, typically they would be in custody for way, way less longer. However, in my state, there is a program where you can be released from the hospital if you are not deemed a risk to public safety anymore, if your risk is low, right?
So when they get sentenced, so let's say it's a, oh, let me ask you, because I don't even know what to assume. Oh my goodness, I'm sorry, my cat, she's chasing this fly. So what would be a charge that they would have? What would be their charge?
It can be anything from, assault to arson. Maybe that is kind of a frequent charge we work with. Sometimes it might be murder. Those are kind of the bigger ones. A lot of the lesser offenses, like misdemeanors, they don't typically go for an NGRI plea, if that makes
so then so say it was assault, right? We'll say it's assault in the second, and whatever the situation, whatever the details are not really. Okay, so if it's assault in the second, right, and they're going to take a plea, would they get the maximum that's allowed?
Always. That is part of pleading NGRI. And another part of it is you have to be competent to stand trial, right? So a part of not guilty by reason of insanity defense is, you undergo a forensic risk assessment and, to deem, are you mentally ill at the time of the crime? What's going on with your mental health, right? And so if your mental health has not returned to a level where you understand the charges leveled against you, you understand, the consequences of those, you might very well still be having a lot of symptoms. You might be, really paranoid, but you understand that you are pleading guilty or not guilty and what that would be, right? And if you're not in that place, you will be sent to the state hospital for what's called competency restoration. And that's where you'll learn about the legal process. You'll very likely be started on some medication, work with some mental health providers to see if you can get to a spot where you are competent to stand trial. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does, and I didn't know that that was the thing. Now, so say let's play it both ways. Now, say you are competent enough to stand trial, and it's assault, and it's a 12-year maximum sentence. So you're going to get sentenced at 12 years because you're pleading not guilty due to reason of insanity, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And so, do you go to prison?
No. So if you get a 10-year maximum sentence, you'll be sent to the state psychiatric hospital, right? And you will work through a lot of groups. You'll very likely be on medications. You'll go and do a lot of work on like, what are your signs and symptoms that you're not doing well, right? Like what happens before you get really sick? What was going on in your life? Excuse me, perhaps, you weren't sober, perhaps you had unstable housing, perhaps you didn't have access to medication. Maybe you don't even know anything about mental illness. Maybe this is your first experience with what mental illness even is, right? So you'll learn about all that. And then if you get to a point where you're very stable and you haven't had symptoms for quite some time and you have a really good relapse prevention plan, then you'll usually come to my program that I work in. And what we do, it's basically the equivalent of reintegration, right?
Okay.
So you can finish out because your sentence, if you will, we don't call it that, but you can finish out in the community under the supervision of my program and the court.
So what exactly is your title?
So, I'm a forensic therapist, and forensic just means with the legal system, right? Because you can come to the state hospital in two ways. You can come be civilly committed, right? Where you're just a danger to yourself or others or gravely disabled. Or you can come because you were arrested, there was concerns about your mental health, and before you go to court for your crime, you have to be evaluated.
So would it be safe to say that your position is a therapeutic parole officer who does case management?
Kind of, I guess. It's more like, so when my people move out, right?
Mm-hmm.
They do have conditions of release, right? So you probably have to take your medication if that's something you're on. You might need the court's permission to move, right? You might need the court's permission to leave the state. You might only need my treatment team's permission. Just to pay. Everyone's court paperwork is different, right? Obviously, you have to refrain from owning weapons or, explosives. You can't likely
harmful items.
Right, exactly. Drugs and alcohol, you cannot consume under supervision. But some of my people also have DOC supervision. And so that just kind of depends on the court again. And so our role is more of one you would kind of think of as like social work, right? So are you having a problem maybe with your landlord? Can I help you solve that? Can we look at what the problem actually is? Do you need somebody else to step in? Because a lot of times people have been in the system, and I know you do this a lot too. They just need someone to come in and speak up for them, right? Yes. So sometimes it's as simple as, I just have to go talk to your landlord because you don't understand paperwork. And then sometimes it's as huge as, well, somebody relapsed. We need to figure out if you can still be safe and treated in the community, or if you might need to have a moment to get your mental health back together before you can.
I think people like it. I mean, I'm assuming because I know what it's like in my area so people are very funny and judgmental, as we all know, about mental health and mental illness. It holds an incredibly large stigma. And I think when crimes are introduced to it, that carries its own kind of stigma. So then when you go and you mix the two of them together and you say like, not guilty due to a reason of mental insanity, people lose their ever loving mind and they think Hitler, they think this person's going to eat somebody, like, and I know it sounds like very dramatic to say, but that's literally how people act. And I thought that people need to see the other side of it. And that's why, like, you and I talk often, and I know the human component of it because of the friendship you and I have and the works that they do. And I think it's so important for people to understand that, like, this is not, I mean, it potentially could be, it could be career criminals whose mental health has gone down the toilet, but this could also just be your everyday Joe or Mary or whoever, you know, that had a meth psychosis or had a mental break and postpartum really bad, and, you know, had a mental break. And at the time that they committed their crime, they legitimately were not mentally capable of understanding the ramifications. And now this is the end result of it. It's not like it's these toxic career criminals that are potentially, you know, re-offending continuously, and finally they're like, oh, they're crazy, let's make this different. It's everyday people that are ending up in these situations because their mental health was so poor at the time that these situations happened and occurred. And I just think it's really important. Like, I really like to talk about that because I really want people to stop putting stigma first and start putting people first, right?
Well, and I think, I mean, you just have to stand next to me when I tell someone what I do for a living to see
I can imagine
huge this stigma is. And like you were just saying, everyone has an idea. It's like, oh, these people trying to scam the system.
Yeah.
And when you actually look at all the numbers, which I don't have in front of me, but I could tell you if you want at some point, the amount of people who plead NGRI to begin with is very, very small. It's like a super small percentage. And of the people who are trying to go for that defense, the people who are actually found not guilty by reason of insanity is like 1% of that. Right?
I don't even know of anyone in this area who's ever actually even gotten that, to be quite honest. And you know, obviously the people I work with deal with court like it's their job, like at times, right? And I've actually, I've never seen someone get it. I've never heard of it in my county. I actually don't know anyone in real life who has gotten it other than your guys that you and I conversate about. Other than that, I don't know anyone. Like, I don't even know if it's a thing. I mean, I'm sure it's a thing in New York State, but I've never heard of it.
I'm pretty sure it is. And I think also something that people really have some preconceived ideas about is it's just, you know, people who have always struggled with their mental health and a lot of homeless people and things like that. And that is true sometimes, right? But also, I mean, I've had clients who were medical doctors. I've had clients who were attorneys. I've had clients who were teachers, who were social workers, you know, just the whole spectrum of people you run into your daily life. And I think people fail to realize it could be any of us, right? It could be you, it could be me, it could be anyone under the right circumstances. And that's why I feel it's so important to keep talking about all of this.
That makes me think of another question. So you said they get the maximum sentence and they do a percentage of that in either a mental hospital or inside in some sort of facility, right? And then when they potentially complete that part of it, then they get reassessed and moved on to the next part of the program. And that being if it is either next, it would be coming back into the community, or would it be like to another facility, another thing, or each his own?
So how it works is my program, and I actually don't have any clients currently who are even hospitalized, right? All of my people are in the community right now. So yeah. So at that point, yes, you go back out into the community under whatever supervision the court orders for you. At a minimum, it will be my program plus community mental health where you see your psychiatrist and things like that. At a maximum, maybe you have to go to be seen by my program, by the Department of Corrections. Maybe you have some serious addiction history that the court really wants to make sure you're on top of. Maybe you go to IOP. That's really tailored to the person. But then, you know, where you will live in the community really is person to person. Some people go back to their homes. Some people go to family members' houses. Some people will go to like an adult family home. Maybe if they have some medical needs, maybe they're older and they need some 24-hour support for healthcare needs. You know, some people will go to like mental health housing, which we're fortunate in this state. We have a lot more resources than other states have, but there are some specific programs that have case managers on site in case there's something needed. So a lot of people will go to clean and sober houses if that's something.
So basically, like they come home and have a ton of support.
Yes, and that's why we have such a low recidivism rate in our program.
Literally, like what I was getting at. Like, it's amazing. So yes, they get these extended periods of sentencing, right? They get a very large, harsh sentence, so it feels like. But when they come home, they have so much support. It's almost like they have no path but to succeed. And I think that's amazing. I mean, it's horrible that you have to get that type of sentencing that puts so much stigma on it, because immediately, you know, and I'm guilty of it in the past too. When I heard that type of sentencing, I immediately thought like crimes against children, sexual assaults, like horrible, horrible crimes, because why else would they give you such an easy pass? Because I didn't realize like the logistics of all of it and what it really entailed, and getting the maximum is never easy, like ever. So are there like steps? Like when you first come out, are you under, like, I know for me personally, when I was on parole, when you first come home, you have the most scrutinizing and claustrophobic type of parole that you could possibly have. And then as you develop a rapport and a relationship, and well, in a perfect world, not Delaware County, but that parole officer would see like, hey, you're on the right track. You're getting your shit together. You're doing the right thing. I'll check in every 90 days, or I'll check in every, you know, once a month instead of every other day, or whatever the case may be. Is it the same principle? Like, are they ever able to be on paper and be participating in a normal life?
So, yeah, I mean, when you first get out, you will see me once a week for the first 6 months. If something comes up and I need to come more, if we're having some sort of crisis, right, then that will happen. But a minimum once a week for the first 6 months. The next 6 months, it's every other week, right? And then once you get to the year mark, if you are doing great, doing everything, and you don't need a lot of help, because, you know, some people just need more assistance.
Structure. Yeah.
Yeah, they might need help with more things. Maybe, you know, their reading's not so great and they don't know how to fill out all the forms that you need for food stamps and your Social Security and your apartment lease, right? And they might just need a little extra assistance with that. But if you're out and you're doing it and you're going to all your appointments and you've done everything you need to do, then at the 1 year point, we can just meet once a month. That's the minimum requirement under the statute. But also, I mean, I've had people buy homes after they've gotten out of the hospital. I've had people get college degrees. One of my guys just graduated from college last week. You know, I've had people go on and get married, and, you know, just a lot of things that people sometimes don't think about for, you know, after a long-term psychiatric hospitalization. But it's not like, ooh, no, scary. You know, I mean, these are just regular people living their life. And there is, in the statute, there is a way to get off supervision. It's really hard and it doesn't happen very often, but it's called an unconditional release. And when people do get that, the case is closed. You are done. You are off supervision and back to, you know, just
regular
a person who's living life, you know. So that takes a lot of risk assessments, a lot of eyes on you. You have to go through a lot of boards and explain, why you should get it, but it happens.
I remember you telling me the one man that they offered it to, and he was like, no.
Yeah. And some people really don't want it because, maybe they don't have a family, or maybe they don't have a good support system, and they want to know that there is someone that they can count on. And there is another thing written into our law that if someone asks to come back to the hospital because they say, you know what, I don't feel safe, my mental health is not great, they can come back. We have to have a bed available for that. And that has prevented, probably, because we don't know what would have happened if they couldn't.
Right. Have you seen that happen?
Yes, it just happened recently. Somebody said, I don't feel good. This is not me. I don't feel safe and I need to come back.
That just makes me feel like sincerely then this is a program that truly works, because obviously it was a good enough program where the person felt safe. The person felt self-awareness, like they learned self-awareness, because for them to come back and be like, I'm not feeling safe, I feel like my mental health is not in a good place, I don't want something bad to happen, that in itself, self-awareness and self-recognition, when things are starting to go down the tubes, that's beautiful. And that unfortunately doesn't happen very often, especially like I see people who know that, and it's a different situation, obviously. They know that they're in mid-relapse, right? But they can't even say it out loud. And then afterwards they're like, I wanted to say something, but I was scared. So the simple fact that this has happened in this program shows that whatever you guys are doing is sincerely working. And that's amazing.
Well, and I think too, what's really helpful is the staff in my program really love being in this program. So they stay. We don't have a ton of, because in mental health, there's a lot of turnover, right? People get burnt out, they go on to different positions, or and that's not to say this doesn't get like, ugh, but we get to see these really cool things that a lot of people that work in the field don't always get to see, and it re-energizes you. But also we get to know people before they get out, right? So I know you, and it's not going into meeting a new person and being like, oh, hey, let me tell you this whole long, terrible story of all the things that happened to me. I already know them, right? And so I think because we work with for so long with these people, it does make it more comfortable too. And it really is about building relationships instead of just like, okay, I'm coming to see you. Good. Okay, bye type situation.
Yeah. And I think because you guys work in such like a unique situation, I think, I don't know. I think anytime you see people at their worst and can potentially start to see them become their best, for me, it's the best part of the job, right? When I see someone like, especially like when I get someone who's being released and then they're in the shelter and then they get their first place and then they get a job and they see their kid and then they hit like 6 months and they hit a year and then they become the best version of themselves. And I got to see every stop along the way. It's fucking stellar. Like it truly is. And that's what makes me keep going. When someone says to me, like, I have 90 days sober, I've never had 90 days sober in my life since I picked up a drug or a drink. That shit's like fucking beautiful, right? And you get to see them come from a mental facility and reacclimate, whether it's trying or not, which it always is, because that shit's fucking hard, right? And you see them reacclimate back into society, and they make their bed on their own. No one told them to. Like, those little things are like life-changing. Like, and it sounds so trivial to say, okay, cool, they made their bed. But bro, when you can't even think straight because your thoughts are so whatever, or you're so sick because you're so dope sick, and you got up and you made your fucking bed, like, those are the incredibly tiny, huge, ginormous victories. And that helps, the next day you get up, you make your bed, and then you do the dishes. The next day you get out, make your bed, do the dishes, take the trash out. Then before you know it, you're applying for jobs. Like, and you don't even realize that you've re-entered, right? You're now a part of society. You're functioning like the rest of us. And I think those are the most incredible, like tiny, huge victories. And it's, it's an oxymoron to say tiny, huge, but they are.
Well, and they add up. Like one of my dudes, he never had his own bed before in his life, his whole life. The only time he ever had a bed is when he was in an institutional setting. And so for him to get his own bed was like the biggest thing in the world.
It's fucking huge.
Yeah. And we were so excited about, dude, you have a bed. And it was
and you know what, that's the crazy part. Like, this is the shit that regular people just take for granted. Like, it's like this is such a great expectation in life that he wanted a bed, but yet y'all get in one every fucking night and have your entire life, childhood, adult. I mean, y'all even had cribs. This guy probably didn't even have a crib.
No. And like, I mean, one of my people stopped going to school in the 5th grade. And that was it. That was the end of school. And a couple of years ago, he got his high school diploma. And it's like, people are like, beautiful. Oh, well, big deal. Everyone gets high school.
It is. It's a huge deal. Dude, so, that'd be like that. Okay, to put that into perspective, Bella is going into the 5th grade. That would be like her stopping after this. She's going to be 11 when the 5th grade is over.
Right. Yeah. And so, I mean, I just think a lot of times people don't understand because it's not something they've ever experienced. And so that's why I think it's so important to just keep talking about this.
Right.
Because imagine what that would be like. And so now imagine what a huge accomplishment this is,
It's tremendous. And I think having people like you, Courtney, it's so incredibly important because first off, you have a very special way about you. You're very bright. You have an amazing vibe. Your aura is beautiful. You don't judge people. You don't stigmatize them. You're warm and welcoming and inviting. And for a lot of the people, that you and I deal with, because they're very, very similar, they have had not a very nice life, and they have not had people who have been warm and inviting to them. They've had people who shun away from them because they might be homeless and they might not have access to water and clean clothing, or they might say weird things that they know is weird, but they still can't help themselves from saying it or doing certain things. And you work with your people and you genuinely, truly love them. And I know that. And I know that if I know that from 1,500 bazillion million miles away, they know that. You show up when no one else does. You go see them in the hospital. You go see them when they're sick. You go see them when they're happy. You become a vital part of their life and their success. And I just feel like we really need more people to go into this field with compassion and understanding and empathy and everything else. And you nail it on the head every day. And I know you put your heart and soul into everything. So unfortunately, we are running out of time. Zoom just notified me. So they suck. So we're going to have to wrap this up. But we will absolutely, what I think we'll do is the next time, what I will do is I'll post something on Instagram and I'll have people present their questions for you. And then this way we can answer their questions, because I know there's going to be a bazillion questions for this. I wish we had more time, but unfortunately we don't. Courtney, thank you so much for coming on here today. We will definitely do this again in the future. And also remember, we recover loudly, so those behind us do not suffer in silence. Bye, guys. I don't know how to stop this. Okay.